Marcia, can you hear me?
We can hear you well.
Great. Just waiting for Marcia to unmute. We'll get mute. We'll get going here. There
Hey,
she
Commissioner,
goes.
Okay, all right.
Now you're coming in. Thanks very
Okay,
much.
great. Hey, well, it's your show today, so go for it.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So welcome. Today is March 12th, 2026. This is the meeting for the Wasatch Front Economic Development District. Commissioner Gage will be conducting this afternoon. So we're going to start this meeting with the consent agenda items. And I'd like to welcome those and the new members to this committee here. And we're going to start, I think it's appropriate to start with introductions because we do have some new committee members. And I'd like to start with those that are taking the time to be there in the boardroom this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, and then we'll go to those online. So Marcia, do you want to start it? Then we'll kick those that are online.
Fantastic, I'll do that. Good afternoon, my name is Marcia White. I am the Economic Development Planner for WFRC, and thank you for being here. There are several new members that are here, and there are several online. So if we want to go just really quick, Mayor Zoltansky, that'd be great.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Monica Zoltansky, Sandy City Mayor. Really happy to be here. I've served on the Regional Development Committee of the WFRC for the last 4 years, and so looking to broaden my depth of understanding and my experience. So I'm eager to join the Economic Development Committee. So thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tish Baroker, and I'm the new mayor in Riverton, Utah.
Thanks, Mayor. Miranda Jones-Cox, Government Relations here at WFRC.
James Taylor. I'm with Weber State University.
Great. Sorry.
Good.
Joel Temple with WFRC.
Good afternoon, Ted Knowlton, Deputy Director at WFRC.
Ryan Meekum, Government Relations, Sandy City.
Great. Does that cover everybody in the conference room, Marcia?
Yeah, we have a couple of other staff in here, but they're looking at me like we're good.
Okay.
I'll just,
All right,
there's several online, so Andrea, just maybe go through the list, and if that's okay with, if I didn't know there would be that many online, so this is good.
Yeah, I think what we want to do, Marcia, is have Andrea introduce them and then have them as they're introduced, who they represent, and then recognize if they're a new member or a longtime member. We have some of both on that, so there's no confusion. Let's have Andrea start with calling a name, and they can take a couple minutes or a couple of seconds and tell us who they represent.
Great, thanks, Commissioner.
Great, I'll read 3 names. Laura Vernon, John Crofts, Shannon Ellsworth.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Vernon, and I am with the Department of Natural Resources, Division of Water Resources. And this is my first meeting. I'm super excited for the opportunity to serve on this commission. I am super excited about bringing water planning into land use planning, transportation planning, and making that connection a little more apparent. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I unfortunately have a previous commitment that I made prior to joining this group that I have to hop off at 2 o'clock. But I will look forward to being in person with you at your next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, John Cross, Gates County Commissioner. Good to see you, Gates.
Commissioner, it was hard for us to hear you, but I think you said you would. Commissioner Cox?
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know if my microphone's working well. John Crofts, Davis County Commissioner. Can you hear me?
We got you that time, John. Welcome.
Hi there, I'm Shannon Ellsworth. I work for Rio Tinto Kennecott, and I'm on the land and water team here.
The next 3, Chris Sloan, Blaine Fackrell, Eric Gibson.
Hi, my name is Chris Sloan. I'm representing Tooele County, and I've been here a really long time.
You've been there a while, Chris. We know that.
Well, until I get it
Welcome.
right, you guys aren't going to let me do anything else.
No.
I'm Blaine Thackrell, Morgan County Commissioner. I'm the alternate. And I've been here a long time.
Everyone, Eric Gibson representing Ogden City.
Meg Padgen, Sarah Tolliver, Mike Moore.
Hi, Meg Padgen, Community and Economic Development Director, Wasatch Front Regional Council staff. Long time.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sarah Tolliver with Visit Ogden, the destination marketing and management organization for Weaver County, and I am also a returning member.
Hi, I'm Mike Moore. I'm the Director of Staff for the 75th Air Base Wing, representing the installation that is Hill Air Force Base, and a returning member as well. Thank you.
Kent Anderson, Dave Mon, Darren Brush.
Kent Anderson, I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development for Davis County, and happy to be back.
Good to see you, Kent.
Dave Mon, Mayor of Syracuse. Lots of economic development happening here, and I'm happy to be back.
Darren Brush, President, Davis Technical College.
Kate Lucas, Carol, Julie Johnson.
Hi, I'm Kate Lucas with KSU Tab. I'm just here at the invitation of Kirsten Swinyard to give an overview of brownfield resources a little bit later on in the meeting. So just a one-time guest here.
Carol Patterson, I am with Mountain Land Association of Governments. I implement our SEDS over at Mountain Land. Happy to be here as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Johnson. I'm with United Way of Northern Utah, and I'm new to this committee. Looking forward to getting to know each of you.
Madison Aviles.
Welcome, Julie.
Karen and Raylene Blocker.
I am Madison, Local Administrative Advisor with Wasatch Front Regional Council. Thank you.
Hi, Karen Lang, Mayor of West Valley.
Hi, Raylene, Commissioner Blocker from Morgan County. I'm the new vice chair and I'm traveling. So if you see me drop off, it's because I've lost reception. Nice to be here.
Jake Thomas, Steve Gibson. Let's see, lost my, and Sean Milne.
I'm Jake Thomas, representing Grantsville City, new to the committee, and look forward to working with each of you in this process.
Steve Gibson, new to the committee, newly elected mayor of Pleasant View, and shout out to James. My wife works with him in Weber State, so I bleed purple. Thank you.
Great, great, great.
Good afternoon, Sean Milne, representing the south tip of Box Elder County. Longtime listener, occasional commenter. Glad to be here.
Sarah Lawless, Rochelle Custer, Gwen Curvin.
Hi, Sarah Lawless, Wasatch Front Analytics.
Rochelle Custer, Tooele County Community Development Director.
Hi, I'm Gwen Curvin, and I'm an economist with the Department of Workforce Services.
Cindy Song, Trent Thompson, Kirsten Swinyard.
Hello, I'm Cindy Song, Business and Economic Development Coordinator with Salt County.
My name is Trent Thompson. I am the Economic Development Representative for Utah for the U.S. Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration. And I just have to say, Wasatch Front EDD wins the prize for largest EDD meeting I think that I've ever attended. So good on Wasatch Front EDD.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Kirsten Swinyard, Economic Development Director for Salt Lake County.
And the final group is Muriel Xochimil, Sherry Stevens, Byron Head, and Katie. Muriel, we still can't hear you.
Muriel Sochmil with X Factor Strategic Communications, a WFRC alumna who is a
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry Stevens with the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, serving Northern Utah.
Byron Head, a community planner in the Community and Economic Development Group at WFRC on the staff.
I'm Katie Atkinson. I'm Sandy City's Community Affairs Director.
Great. And then in the room, we have John A. Nardone, Jordan Chandler, and I'm Andrea Pearson. Thank you.
I also see Stephanie Russell on as well from Weber County.
Stephanie, do you want to introduce yourself? You there?
She seems to be having another conversation.
Okay, we keep her busy up here in Weber County. So is that all, Andrea? Do we cover everybody?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. So I just like to say welcome to those recoming committee members, the ones that have been here before. It's great to see the experience on this, but also our new mayors that are new to this process. I think hopefully they'll find this committee to be a very active, interactive committee that we really look to accomplish certain goals that we'll talk about through the session or through the year. And obviously our great staff of the WFRC that really drives this committee so that we can accomplish what we set out to do with our goals and vision statement for the year. So thanks for the opportunity to serve on this committee. I'm looking forward to a great year. So with that,
Commissioner,
yeah.
Sorry if I could just interrupt you just for 2 seconds.
Go ahead.
I think one of, if you don't mind, Trent Thompson from the EDA mentioned this, but one of the biggest things that we've done in the last couple of years is really trying to make sure that we have a wide breadth of people that are on this committee. So for the new members, you'll see that we have both elected officials, which is a little bit different than a lot of the other committees that you'll see at WFRC, as well as the private sector. And so, and as well as the educational institutions and nonprofits and small groups. And so I just wanted you to know that we've spent a lot of time really making sure that we have a really diverse and really good group of people that really care about economic development. So I just wanted to make mention of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. We're actually going to be talking about that just in a second here. So, and I think that's a great addition to this committee. And, you know, based upon our bylaws, we're required to ratify the committee members, new appointments, and appoint the chair and vice chair of this committee. The new members can be found on that website, and a list of all members and their alternates is shown on the screen. So I don't know if you want to show that now, or you can pick that up on the website. Did you want to show that, Marcia?
Yeah, we're trying to get to the.
Okay, well, we'll let you do that when it comes up. And as Marcia said, this year we're really trying to. There you go. You can see the names there. So as Marcia mentioned, this year we really thought it'd be beneficial to add people from the private sector, since the private sector really is the one that drives economic development to a great extent. Government, we step in to help whenever possible, but we depend on the private sector really to make things happen. And because of that, a lady by the name of Mary Catherine Perry will serve as, along with myself, will serve as co-chairs this year, and Commissioner Raylene Blocker will serve as vice chair. The appointments, as I just talked about, were approved by the WFRC Council. However, those appointments that you see on the screen now need to be ratified by this committee. And again, one of the changes is adding a private co-chair to this committee, which I think will be great. It's always good to have that additional perspective. So with that, I would look for a motion to approve the appointments as you see on the screen in front of you.
So moved.
Okay, we have a
Seconded.
motion. Second, did you get those, Andrea?
No, please say your names.
Yeah, could say your name when.
Shannon Ellsworth made the motion.
Mike Moore seconded.
Thank you for that. I'm going to place the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm going to roll the motion carries. Thank you very much. Let's go to our next action items, which is a motion to approve the minutes from our meeting held on December 11th, 2025. That seems like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. So for those that were in that meeting, I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes as of 12/11/2025.
Kent Anderson, I make the motion to approve.
Thank you. You have a second?
Mike Moore, I second.
Second. All right. I'm going to place a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? I'm going to rule the motion carries. Thanks very much. Let's go to the chair's report. It'll be fairly brief. I think everybody understands there's a lot going on in the economic development space across northern Utah, as well as the state of Utah. And I'm really grateful for those that are willing to take their time out, those for both the public sector and the private sector, and get involved with our economic development committee. And really, we learn from each other in this committee. And one thing I'll say is, especially for those new people, one thing we like to hear, or if there's any questions, make sure that you raise your hand, put it in the chat, and we'll recognize you. The best opportunities for education in this committee come from each other and experiences of what we may be doing or what has worked for us in our own economic backgrounds, our own backyards. So please take that opportunity to feel free to chime in. From our business expansion we see to retention, the opportunity zones that we'll be talking about. I just want, again, to say everybody thanks for being here. Feel free to chime in. We look forward to understanding what is taking place in your particular city, county, and private sector. So with that, seeing no hands raised, now's the opportunity for public comments. Anyone online or in the audience that would like to make a public comment, now's your opportunity to come forward.
Commissioner, there's no one here.
No public. All right, I'm going to move on then. Our agenda shows action item 5, which is America 250. I understand we're going to table that. Is that correct? Bring that forward at another time, Marcia?
Yeah, we have a pretty large agenda today that I think it's more important to talk about the other two things. And so if we can put it off until our June meeting, that would be awesome.
That's great. Yeah, I think we've got I know people are somewhat concerned about time constraints. So let's go ahead and get on with our next agenda item, which is the Economic Development 2026 Legislative Recap. We have with us our own Miranda Jones-Cox, who I know was at the Capitol more than once this session, probably about every day. Between her and Andrew, they did a great job of monitoring the bills that went through that we supported from an economic development standpoint. And we've asked her if she'd just take a few minutes and highlight what happened with those bills, not all the bills, but what happened, especially those dealings with transportation, land use, economic development. So Miranda, welcome. I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Miranda Jones-Cox, I do our government relations here at WFRC. And like Commissioner Frower mentioned, the legislative session just wrapped up last week. And so now we're in the process of, analyzing what exactly happened and how is this going to impact us and our communities, and what bills passed and what did we miss. And so it's kind of a fun post-session period of getting to present like I am here and share about some of the things that happened this session. So I'll jump into it. Like Commissioner Frower mentioned, I'm going to try and focus my comments around economic development related bills, maybe some housing bills, and touch on a few key transportation bills. A lot of the other presentations I'm giving related to the session And, the most of our focus during the legislative session is obviously on transportation related legislation. But I will focus today's comments on economic development. So as a quick, what happened during the session, more bills were introduced than in any previous legislative session. So lots of bills introduced, lots of bills passed, and the state's budget continues to slowly get a little bit larger and larger every year, at $31.8 billion currently. Let's just start hitting on a few bills. So you might be aware of some of these. Hopefully I can share something that's new or notable information to you. So House Bill 68, this is Housing and Community Development Amendments by Representative Cal Roberts. Representative Roberts actually, I think, ran a pretty good chunk of economic development, housing, and transportation bills this session. And he kind of continues to be a legislator that we're working with more and more, as he's very involved and interested in the space. So what this bill did is it moved the Division of Housing and Community Development that's currently at work for the Division of Workforce Services over to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. And another bill I'll share that GOEO is now going to be GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, once again. And then this bill also created the State Housing Coordinator position to lead that office. That position is already more or less held by Steve Waldrop, who is the Governor's Director of Housing. But as far as I understand, if Steve stays in that position more or less takes over that leadership and role in GOED for housing. Still coordinates with various housing agencies, coordinates with local governments. There's specific language in this bill requiring coordinating with AOGs, Association of Governments throughout the state, as well as metropolitan planning organizations. WFRC is both of those things. And so this bill ultimately consolidates all of the different housing offices and put some parameters on how these functions should be coordinating together moving forward, including with the statewide housing plan. The next bill I had mentioned, HB 475, Development Planning and Coordination Amendments by Representative Roberts, changes the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity to Economic Development. A name change, but as I understand it, that also a name change often orients with a vision of what's to come. Recently, as you all likely know, GOEO, now GOED, has a new executive director. And so along with maybe perhaps some of those changes, this bill refines GOED's mission, GOED's structure, what the role of the executive director is, and what the role is of this new Economic Development Council. So on this new council includes members from either the governor, speaker, president, or their appointments, an individual from Utah Inland Port Authority, Point of the Mountain State Land Authority, Utah Fair Park Area Reinvestment Zone or Reinvestment Area, MIDA, SITLA, and then local representation from the league or local cities, and then also from counties, perhaps could be from UAC. So there's a wide variety of membership there. The duties of this organization or of this council is to obviously provide strategic direction, work with the executive director at GOED on strategy moving forward, coordinate projects statewide. I have a few things listed here, like recommending targeted industries, gathering input from other economic development agencies throughout the state. And then I also listed a few new clarifying roles of the GOED executive director. So kind of spells things out on how GOED is going to move forward with their role in economic development as a leader in economic development in the state. Also, if anyone has any questions or has any additional insights as I run through these bills, I would, feel free to jump in. I would certainly love to hear some commentary. House Bill 492. This is Transportation Infrastructure and Housing Amendments by Representative Cal Roberts. This bill expands the state's role in providing local, regional infrastructure in order to support housing development, meaning that it would provide grants and loans to local governments to provide infrastructure. Eligible projects could mean water, sewer, stormwater, wastewater, transportation facilities, with the intent that it is to help unlock housing units that currently do not have the infrastructure needed in order to move forward. And so this, I would say, is significant because to date, the state hasn't taken a large role in providing significant regional infrastruccture support, but they have expressed that willingness moving forward. So there is those two: a grant fund, a loan fund. One of the grant funds is specifically for entities in Salt Lake County, and the funding sources for these two funds, for the loan fund, that funding, that $100 million, comes from the TIF, the Transportation Investment Fund. So that's actually funding that will not be repaid back into the transportation fund. So UDOT does see a hit to their budget from that, unfortunately. But given that it is also helpful and eligible for transportation projects, that could be beneficial in other ways. And then the money for the 150 million grants, it comes from bonds to be repaid through the County of the First Class Highway Projects Fund. Again, Salt Lake County specific. And then also, I will note this bill passed at like 11:45, the last night of the session. Lots happened on this bill in the last bit of it, but I will note that there were a few specific projects funded: an $18 million loan from the loan fund to the Point Mountain State Land Authority, $5 million per year for 30 years to the Salt Lake County Convention Center. This was from the County of the First Class Highway Projects Fund. And then a $50 million reallocation from some existing transportation dollars for a project in Salt Lake City will be shifted to the Convention Center project as well. So there's a lot in this bill, but I guess I would characterize it as the state having a greater role in infrastructure investment. And I can't see if anyone does have hands raised, so Andrea or Jordan, let me know if that's the case. Thank you. Another one, House Bill 507, Coordination of Regional and Local Economic Development Projects Amendments. You all are likely aware of a number of tax increment financing tools that have been created over the past several years. Those include tools like the Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone, First Home Investment Zone, Home Ownership Promotion Zone, Convention Center Reinvestment Zone, all these zones, right? And what Representative Roberts' intent was behind this bill is to consolidate all of those tools, to sunset some of those existing tools and create a new regionally significant development zone, which there's so much in this bill that I hesitate to go into too many details here. But it has similar parameters, similar tax increment capture to those other previous tools. But has some differences, and I think the intent behind this change was and it accompanied several other tax increment financing proposals and other bills this session, was to increase transparency behind tax increment financing, was to have greater reporting and accountability from entities who are utilizing these tools, and then to have greater simplicity around these tools so there's not a handful of different zones, if you will. So those existing tools will be sunsetted by 2028, and the RSDZs, I believe, can be implemented as soon as the bill goes into effect. Ted, were you going to jump? I saw you grab your mic. I wasn't sure if you were going to jump in.
Well, I am continued to absorb this one.
Yeah,
And
me too.
I'm thinking that that a consequence of the simplicity will be that we'll get more money spent in these kinds of purposes. Does that track?
Get more money spent?
Well, like if there's a
meaning-
certain amount of money that's been available, but the utilization of it has been below
Oh, sure.
because it's hard to apply or people don't, the uptake is low, but the money can stay the same that's available, but we might just get more of it out there doing stuff.
Sure, yeah, we might see more proposals, given that there's a streamlined, simplified, tool. So that definitely could be the case. There are, I think, in some cases, caps on how many of these RSDZ zones can be implemented on top of other existing zones, right? So if there's already X number of HTRZs approved, then there can only be so many total. Yes, but I do think there is an opportunity for more of these to be adopted with, again, some of these parameters that we aren't necessarily getting to the details on, that maybe perhaps limits the amount of tax increment that can ultimately be captured, where, currently with an HTRZ, it's a max capture of 80%, whereas some of these other tools, it's 60 or 70%.
Yeah. And I guess, thank you for that. That's very helpful. And I'm wondering, Marcia and Mr. Chair, if this is the kind of bill that, we report back on the implementation of it for this committee over time.
That's a great idea, Tim.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll note the last point on the slide here mentions that during the interim period, the legislature will be having a specific study group to study tax increment financing further, because there was such an interest from the legislature in that this legislative session. I'll note a few other relevant bills. HB 575, this is the fuel tax and supply amendment bill, also from Representative Roberts. This bill was a bill that Representative Roberts ran in coordination with the Speaker of the House. They were very public about the intentions behind this bill, which was to reduce the gas tax to provide taxpayers relief at the pump. Initially, the bill would have taken a larger cut at the gas tax and offset the prospective impacts with removing certain exemptions for fuel exported out of state. However, where the bill ultimately landed was not taxing exported fuel, but doing a very temporary cut to the gas tax for 6 months. From July through December of this year. The estimated, Ted?
Sorry, Miranda, there's a question
sorry.
in the chat. It's who decides what is regionally significant, and by Carol Patterson. And I didn't know which bill that might have been referencing, but.
Yeah, it could have been the, say that again. Yeah, good question. I do think in the bill related to the infrastructure grant and loan funds, I think there is a definition for regionally significant there in the bill. I don't have that in front of me at the moment. I'm happy to follow up and provide a little more commentary there, but off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure what portion. Or this bill. Okay. Oh, regionally significant development zones. Yes, there is like I said, some definitions on what regionally significant means. I think in this case, regionally significant is maybe what the name of the tool is. But I think the HTRZ, FIZ, HOPS, those existing tools, though they're sunsetted, basically some of their parameters stayed in this new regionally significant development zone. So I don't know that it entirely overhauls what types of projects can be done. I think you're going to see similar type projects like we saw under those previous tools still eligible here under RSDZ. But I'm sorry if I'm not able to answer that one more comprehensively. Lastly, with the fuel tax bill, it did have an impact to the transportation fund of around $40 million. Local governments are being held harmless from that impact. So B&C road funds are are obviously impacted by gas tax revenues, revenues to the Transportation Investment Fund. And so the UDOT will see a reduction in about $28 million to their program, which will ultimately require them to delay some projects that they've identified. Two other transportation bills I'll hit very quickly. I'm not going to hit too much of what's in this one. This is the transportation omnibus bill. There's a lot. That's why it's called an omnibus, because there are, 30 or so different changes related to various transportation programs in this bill. Notably, it amends local option sales tax distributions in first and second class counties, provides funding for rural bus replacement through the Transit Transportation Investment Fund, allows for certain funds to be used for corridor preservation, increases bonding authority for the double tracking of front runner. There's so much in here. One that I did want to note, and that I think this group has maybe talked about some before, is specifically the changes to highway reduction strategies in downtown Salt Lake City. This was from SB 195 last year that required Salt Lake City to not do certain narrowing or certain projects on downtown Salt Lake City streets in a certain area of the city. What this bill does is it repeals those previous provisions and now requires UDOT and Salt Lake City to enter into an agreement on those highway reduction strategies, looking at ways to mitigate impacts of previous highway reduction strategies, to codify certain tiered road structures, and to continue the work that was proposed with the last bill, which was to have greater coordination and collaboration with stakeholders, including the business community in downtown Salt Lake City. And so, as we understand it, Salt Lake City and UDOT are both not happy, but they're comfortable moving forward and working together in continuing to address what's being asked of them here. So just wanted to note that provision was in this bill, as there has been quite a few discussions on this topic over the past year. And then lastly, SB 197, Transportation Funding and Governance by Senator Harper. This amends the governance structure of the Utah Transit Authority by replacing the existing Transit Board of Trustees with a new 7-member Transit Commission. The transit commissioners will be appointed by the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, and the Governor. And the Governor's appointments are nominated by local councils of governments, or COGs. And so this new commission needs to be in place by July 1 of this year. And nominations by local councils of governments need to be sent to the governor by May 1st of this year. So it's a very, very quick turnaround for our councils of governments to identify potential nominees for this transit commission. So we're in the process of working with our COGs so that they understand what is being requested of them in this way, and how they might be able to identify some helpful and some good candidates for the new UTA Transit Commission. So just something to have on everyone's radar. And then lastly, one part we really like about this bill is it increases transit funding to the Transit Transportation Investment Fund with an additional funding mechanism for the TTIF that would take a portion of growth in state sales tax and would ultimately grow over time to continue to provide long-term stable funding for transit statewide. So again, ensuring that we have adequate resources for our transportation system is important. And we believe that this bill makes a step in the right direction for that. Very quickly on appropriations, I mentioned, it looks like I have a typo there. Looks like there's that additional funding for transit. That funding, we mentioned those two grant and loan funds for regional infrastructure to unlock housing. I did mention that UDOT is having some impacts to their own budget because of some of these new programs or changes, somewhere to the tune of around $130 million. So again, UDOT may have to delay some projects. But then I also want to note one helpful and exciting thing that happened this session, which was that a program known as the Local Administrative Advisor Program, the League of Cities and Towns and the state's 7 associations of governments have this program where we have a local administrative advisor that aids our small, often more rural communities that don't have the technical staff in-house, don't have transportation planners, don't have city managers, don't have city administrators, and provides them technical assistance. So Madison in our office is that local administrative advisor, and we were able to restore funding that was previously cut to this program to continue that program to move forward. So one other success of this legislative session. But with that, that's kind of what I have. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, apologize if there's so many changes in all of these bills. I think am still trying to understand some of the impact of them. But if you do have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them or chat offline about any of these bills. So,
Miranda, great presentation. Any questions that Miranda can answer? I would just say, Miranda, thanks for all you were able to accomplish up on the Hill this year. A lot of transportation, a lot of land use bills. The number of bills, I think it was just almost mind-boggling to track on a day-to-day basis what was taking place. So appreciate all the work you did up there.
thank you, Commissioner.
Any questions for Miranda? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which would be EDA grant opportunities. And it's a pleasure to welcome Trent Thompson, who represents the economic development for EDA, and introduce him to our committee. Trent, you can just tell a little bit about your grant background. And as we mentioned, he's the regional EDA connection that has really helped us at the WFRC in securing help grants for our cities, towns, and counties, and securing that EDA funding. So Trent, you're there. I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner and Chair. Real quick background. I've always been with the federal government. So I started my career, most of my career in national security, worked on the Afghanistan program at USAID when I started my career, and then moved to NORAD, U.S. Northern Command in 2010. And that's when I moved out west from DC. And became Utah's and Colorado's economic development representative. And the one unfair part of this is that I live in Denver, not Salt Lake City. And so someday, hopefully when and if EDA grows in capacity, you may have your own in situ economic development representative. But the role I play is, I think, somewhat unique in the federal government, at least from the perspective that I've had in the federal government, in that I say this without really jest. Federal grants are funding sources of last request because of the amount of bureaucracy and requirements that go into that. And I can make a good case for why that exists, because you want to have a fair balance between being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars, but also making sure that communities can access the funds that Congress intends for them to access. And so that balancing act is really hard to get perfect. And right now, I think it's a little too weighted on the being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, where we have regulations, we have bureaucracies, and we have all these requirements. But know that the intent is there for it to be so that grants are implemented in a way where your communities grow economically. And so my role, and this is what is to help you through that process when applying for an EDA grant. I can review drafts. I can look at. I can talk to you before you even start putting pen to paper or electrons to screen, I guess, as I should say now. So just know that if there's anything that you get out of today, my contact information, which I'll share at the end of this time, my contact information, and my job is to work with you at the very beginning stages of deciding whether or not to apply for an EDA grant to implement your economic development priorities. And I say that earnestly because EDA does pride itself on saying on funding projects that are locally driven economic development projects. And so let me get into a little bit about EDA just in general. And I see some friendly faces here, so this may be a bit redundant for them, but I apologize, but I want to make sure everyone that's participating today has a good understanding of EDA and of the economic development districts. EDA, just a real quick background, the one institutional funding that our small agency, and I'll get to that in a second, provides to communities is through what's called the Partnership Planning Grant, which funds the comprehensive economic development strategies that economic development districts are in charge of implementing for their various regions. And so that's our only program where funds are institutional, meaning every year funds are provided to provide capacity and a planning for economic development level at a regional level. Whereas most of our projects after that are one-off initiatives that communities present to EDA saying, this is what we want to do. And let me, before I get into that, let me talk about EDA as a budget-wise, just to get it so you have a sense of how large of an agency we are, and I should say how small of an agency we are. Last January, our budget was passed with roughly $466 million for the country. So keeping that in mind, that we usually normally play a small role in a larger vision for any economic development project, because our grants at most for any one specific project could be $1 to $3 million, and that's not going to be a lot unless it's leveraging other funds and other programs and other investments that are being made. So $466 million for our standard programming, but there's also every year, most of the time, Congress passes supplemental bills related to major disasters that took place. During the pandemic, for example, our budget was, I think, 10 times. It was roughly $3 to $6 billion during the pandemic, and every county in the nation was eligible because every county in the nation was under a disaster declaration. Fortunately for Morgan County, although it's a silver lining to ever be eligible because of having a federally declared disaster, the only county in Wasatch Front Regional Economic Development District that is eligible for the disaster supplemental funds that exist today, which is $1.5 billion, is Morgan County. And I'm working with Green Mountain right now on a potential project that they may be applying for. But regardless of whether it's our regular funds or disaster funds or some other program that EDA has, that's not your job to figure out. It's my job to work with you to find out what is the right program to implement a project. And so what do I mean by a project? So I kind of think of it as a spectrum of types of ways that EDA can partner with communities. It's at one end of the spectrum is the due diligence needed to determine if you want to implement a project. So if you have a feasibility study or technical assistance or want to look at market demand in a particular industry, or some sort of nuanced specific need, planning need or technical assistance need for your community, you could apply for a planning grant with EDA. But let's say you've done that due diligence and you know you want to implement a business incubator, or you want to implement a workforce development project that's going to focus on specific skill sets where there's a gap in your community, but there's a demand for those skill sets by industry that's living in your community and they're hiring outside of your community. We can help work with developing workforce development programs or infrastructure to train community members to be in jobs that are of higher skill and higher paid. And those are called implementation projects. And those are usually in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant award, whereas planning grants are usually maybe tens of thousands to potentially 100,000, depending on what the requirement is. And then at the end of the spectrum is construction projects, and it's construction projects of public infrastructure or nonprofit owned infrastructure that is leading to private sector job creation and investment. And so the best case example of what that could look like is a county owns land that needs to be developed for a business park. And you have one business or two businesses saying, if we had water, sewer, roads, public infrastructure extended out, mainline infrastructure extended out to that area, we could invest in building our facility and creating jobs in your community. And as a result, EDA could help with maybe a component of that development of that land. The key is that it's publicly owned land or nonprofitly owned land. And that's where whenever developers are involved, it gets tricky and it's a little difficult. Again, these are things that we can talk through when and if you have ideas on how to partner with EDA. So that's kind of the spectrum. And while I say that's the spectrum of what we can do, we look to communities to say, here's what we want to do. And while I just said we pride ourselves on locally driven economic development, we also do have a broad kind of framework for what are the activities we can do. And I'm going to put in the chat a link to our investment priorities. These investment priorities up until December of 2024, when we were reauthorized by Congress, which is basically just saying, Congress saying, we like you and we want you to do certain things certain ways, but this isn't a funding bill, it's just a authorization bill. They set into law these investment priorities, and I'll just quickly address them. The first one is critical infrastructure. The second one is workforce and workforce development. The third is innovation and entrepreneurship, business incubation, supporting innovation and innovative industries. The fourth one is economic recovery resilience. That really links to helping to respond to disasters and with economic development activities. And then the fifth one is manufacturing, which is a lot of the time what the industry is that we're supporting for whatever the project is. It's because manufacturing can lead to higher paid jobs most of the time. So those are our investment priorities. And then in the link I gave you, there are three kind of preceding bullets, and they're important. And that's why I'm going to note them, because these are the things that we require. A, that your project fits within one of these priorities, and they're pretty broad. So it's pretty easy to find a way to make it fit. And talking with me and brainstorming with me, we can likely find a way, or at the very least, I'll say, this probably isn't going to work for EDA, but you should go look at HUD or USDA or Health and Human Services, because a lot of time, and I noticed, in the bills that were passed into law this year by the state, a lot had to do with housing. While I understand very much so in both Colorado and Utah, workforce housing is probably one of the most critical economic development issues that everyone is facing in the region. EDA has kept an arm's length from projects that are workforce housing related, because of the fact that we do require, and this gets to one of those three preceding bullets that I mentioned, that whatever the project is, there's a direct correlation to high-skilled, high-paid job creation that results from the project. So that's a little bit how we narrow down what are the activities we can do. So kind of to recap, we can do everything from planning to non-construction activities, where we can actually help fund with personnel and staffing at times, to construction of public infrastructure. The key is that we're not doing institutional funding. We're doing one-off funding to help establish a program, and then and part of the application is going to be, how is that program going to be maintained in the out years? And we're also going to be building infrastructure that's going to last for 20 years. The other what else you just should be aware of, but I don't want to get into the details, and it also relates to the reauthorization, is that you do have to be eligible. And I mentioned that you've got to be a public entity or a nonprofit. But at the same time, there has to be eligibility either based on what we call special need categories, and a major federal disaster declaration is an example of one kind of special need. But the primary way to be eligible is based on distress related to per capita income and or unemployment levels compared to the national average. And again, I won't go into detail, but these are discussions I will have with a community early on to see if there's a potential to partner with EDA. Why this is related to the reauthorization bill that was passed a year ago last December, was because Congress set new parameters for eligibility that go beyond per capita income and unemployment. And I won't go into the specifics of those, but know the EDA is working to figure out what the threshold is for eligibility based on these new parameters. And what I very much expect will happen, particularly in the Wasatch Front region, is that there will be opening opportunities for other communities that historically were not eligible to partner with EDA that now may be eligible. So that's something just to keep be aware of, that I would say in the next year, EDA will be coming out with new eligibility parameters. But again, I don't want to dive too deep into the weeds unless you have questions about it, and then I'll dive as deep as you want. So that's kind of EDA in a nutshell. The only other thing I wanted to just kind of highlight on are some of the new programming or new opportunities that are going to be coming out that are specific, but they're coming out in the next month or two. And one isn't coming out. It's just that it's where we may have a cutout of a small amount of funding to support workforce development as it relates to AI, but also know that we want to support the president's AI action plan that was published last spring any way we can. And while we still have to require that projects are competitive, meaning that they're going to lead to private sector job creation, if there are feasibility studies on understanding the energy demands, on understanding water demands on data centers, for example, or if there are AI specific projects that your community is looking at where you could implement some sort of programming or workforce development in AI, those are areas that we can partner with you on and are priority for the administration. And then secondly, something that that the region most likely is going to, in the Salt Lake region is most likely going to take most advantage of out of Utah is our annual competition for innovation and entrepreneurship that's competed at the national level is called Build to Scale. And we had a competition last year, and I know Utah had a number of applicants that submitted an application, but we didn't make awards. And so what that means is all the funding from last year is folded into this year. And in the coming months, we'll announce a new competition with both this year's funding and last year's funding. The good news is it's twice the funding. The bad news is it'll probably be twice the applicants as well, because there were no awards made last year. And so that's also something just to look out for. The easiest way to look out for this kind of information from EDA is just to join our newsletter, and there's a way to do that on our website, eda.gov. But I just wanted to let you know about those two kind of areas because they are going to be a focus for us in the coming months. So I'll stop there and see if there is any questions or if there are anything that I can do. And I'll also put in the chat my email address because that's going to be the best way to contact me if and when your community has questions about EDA and how to partner with us.
Thanks, Trent. Any questions or comments regarding Trent or the EDA presentation we just had?
This is James Taylor from Weber State. Hey, Trent. Just out of curiosity, is the build to scale, is it going to be very similar to how it was in the past? The same kind of funding mechanisms and what you'll fund?
Yeah, I expect that it will be very similar. Every competition has been similar, but there are always sometimes unique twists that administrations can add to them. So, I'm totally riffing right now, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that there could be an AI twist to this year's competition. I'm not saying there is by any means, but it's an example of where there could be, there could be 3 or 4 years ago, there was a blue economy and where it was focusing on water and innovation for certain, and a cutout of that funding didn't mean all applicants had to deal with water and innovation. It just meant there was going to be a focus on that for a subset of funds. Something similar could happen this year. We just don't know until what's called the notice of funding opportunity is actually published and the competition is actually announced. So James, I wish I could answer the question other than it very likely is going to be similar to last year, but there may be differences based on priorities of this administration. That's something else I should just real quick to highlight on. When I mentioned the investment priorities of the 5 that were written into law, every administration has the opportunity to also add to them. And if passed as prologue, and I say this just because in 2016 and 2017, there were a number of projects that we did because of this, it's possible that in the coming year or so, EDA will add an investment priority that focuses on opportunity zones, because the opportunity zones were part of the bill that was passed last summer for opportunity zones 2.0, I should say. And those we could say, and one of the things we did back in 2016, 2017 was make that a carpet place for eligibility. So you didn't have to be distressed as long as the project was in an opportunity zone. EDA could partner with you on it. I can't promise that that's going to happen this time around, but it happened last time, and so it very much could be. It could happen again. Sorry, I didn't mean to take away from that. Any other question related to build to scale?
Can I ask one quick follow-up? Sorry.
Yep.
And I know you don't know the exact time, but is it the next month or so, or do you have any kind of estimated time?
What I can do is I can tell you phasing. So I understand there's a priority 1 is to announce a initiative related to AI, and the same office that's writing that initiative is the office that's putting together the Build to Scale competition. So Build to Scale will come after that. Now, just using common sense, the fiscal year ends in September. If the goal is to have the competition this fiscal year and to make awards this fiscal year, then I can't imagine an announcement being made any later than May in order to be able to give time for applicants to put together an application, submit, and then review them before the end of September. But that, again, is just using common sense. It's not any information that I have outside of what's happened in the past. Sometime this spring would be my best guess.
Any additional questions that Trent can answer? Trent, we appreciate you being with us. Appreciate the partnership with EDA. You're a great resource we have here in northern Utah to advance our economic development opportunities. And just for those that are online, I think Trent has dropped his contact information in the chat. And if you have any need for additional information or contact, I'm sure Trent would be happy to work with you on your program on any of your issues. So thanks again, Trent.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Let's move now to our next agenda item, which is brownfield funding / historic preservation. This was actually an issue that was brought to us by the EdTech, the Economic Development Technical Advisory Committee. And we're very fortunate this afternoon to have with us Kirsten Swinyard from the Salt Lake County and Kate Lucas from Kansas State University to help us really understand this particular funding source, the brownfield funding. And learning about brownfields for a lot of our communities can help really in our identity opportunities for redevelopment, to look at underutilized or contaminated sites, and turn those into economic opportunities, economic assets for our particular economic area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kirsten or Kate, whoever would like to go first.
Great, thank you. Kate, why don't you take folks through Brownfields 101 and then I'll follow up with some local programs.
Yes, will do. Okay, I'm sharing my screen here. Can you all see that? Oh, no, I have to hit share first. All right, how's that?
We can see it.
Okay, no complaints. I'm going to maximize this. Okay, great. So just a quick show of hands for those of you who have your videos on and or are in person there. Who here knows what a brownfield is? Just raise your hand if you do know. Okay, so a couple, but not necessarily everyone. So that's great. This will be new information. So before I get into the definition of brownfield,
after
sorry.
your definite, no, you keep going.
Okay, sorry. So just a quick overview of KSU TAB and what we do. The organization I work for is called Kansas State University's Technical Assistance to Brownfields Program. We obviously are based in Kansas at KSU, but we provide these technical assistance services to communities in 21 states, basically all the states between Ohio and Utah, as you can see in purple on this map. I am the Assistant Director for EPA Region 8, which includes Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, and Utah. I am based in Colorado, in Denver, like Trent. But it is nice to be able to come out to Salt Lake City and see you guys in Utah.
Hey, Kate,
so yes.
Before you go on, can we answer what a brownfield is? Or
yes, so I will. I'll get into that.
Can I give you my guess of a brownfield?
Sure, go ahead.
You probably don't want my guess. Mayor, would you like to? No idea? All right. Anybody else? A cleanup site? Anybody online? Well, I mean, I'm sure going to get into the definition. Yeah. I just wondered what people. I'm in a city where we have quite a few brownfields, so I just wondered if others had any ideas. James, you're sitting next to me. All right. Anybody online? Good answers? I see John thumbs up. That's good. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Kate, if you want to go on.
Yeah, so we are an EPA grantee. We receive funding from the EPA to provide free services to communities within the states that we serve on helping them figure out how to clean up and redevelop these brownfield sites. And as you are all probably just viciously wondering, what is a brownfield? So I'm going to flip through a few precedent images. A lot of people think that they don't have brownfields in their community, but brownfields are in almost every community, and they're not as scary as they may sound. So here we have a former industrial site. We have an old gasoline station or a service station, an auto parts shop, a historic Main Street building, an old motel, old schools, also old hospitals can be big brownfield sites. And then here out in the Mountain West, one of the things we have a lot of are former mine sites and mine processing sites. Okay, so now hopefully you have a little bit better idea of what a brownfield can look like. The technical definition of a brownfield as defined by the EPA is a real property, the expansion, reuse, or redevelopment of which is complicated by either the presence or the perceived presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. And the two things to emphasize here are basically that redevelopment is being hindered by contamination, and that may be real and may be present, but it also may just be a perception of contamination. So with these sites, what's important for you as economic development people is that brownfields are an opportunity for economic development. And sometimes the cost of the environmental remediation is the real barrier to redevelopment. For example, in historic buildings, downtown Main Street buildings, asbestos and lead paint, it's a pretty easy thing to remediate, but the cost can be prohibitive. For other more industrial sites, dry cleaners, old gas stations, it can be cost. It can also be kind of the complication or the risk factor that prevents these sites from being redeveloped. The good news is that for brownfield sites, there are resources. And so the intent is not for it to be sort of an albatross around your neck, but for the brownfields label to provide opportunities for funding and technical assistance that can help you really move forward with the project and put that back into productive use. Okay, so those of you who did not know what a brownfield was before, do you feel that you now have a basic understanding of what a brownfield is and if there are any brownfields within your community?
Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
Okay, great.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would this be considered eligible as a brownfield site if we had a building that needed seismic reinforcement, or because we're along the Wasatch Front, we've been having earthquakes on the weekly lately, but would that be a criteria that could
No, so with
qualify?
brownfields, that is typically limited to substances that are controlled by the EPA. So building materials like asbestos and lead paint qualify a building for brownfields funding, but also sort of industrial, petroleum, chemical solvents and chemicals. Those are all would qualify a site for brownfields funding.
Gotcha.
But
Thank
structural
you.
things like seismic insufficiency would not count as a brownfield.
And I'm going to jump in here really quickly because Raylene Blocker asked if a gun range could be a brownfield, and yes, absolutely. The lead in the munitions is controlled and counts as soil contamination, especially if you've got a history of use over many decades, as many gun ranges have, and there might be bits of lead just floating around in the soil. So yes, for sure.
Oh yeah, and I apologize. I actually can't see the chat comments, so if there's anything that anyone asks, just stop me and let me know. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick little case study. Here is a project that KSU Tab worked on quite recently in a community called Roundup, Montana. Roundup is located about an hour north of Billings. It's a community of around 1,700 people. It's the county seat. And it's a community that historically was based on farming, ranching, also a lot of coal mining in this area. That coal mining and extraction peaked in the 1950s, and the community size has been declining ever since then, which has resulted in a pretty gap-toothed downtown. They have some buildings that are occupied, but a lot of them are vacant, have been vacant for, if not decades, then many, many years. Um, and they just kind of are struggling with overall disinvestment in their downtown area. But they recently elected some new county commissioners who were very enthusiastic about providing economic development in their town, and focusing on that as a priority for the community. So we were asked by the county commissioners to work on the Weir building, which is a historic building built in 1914. It was around 27,000 square feet plus a pretty large basement. And it had been vacant since, I believe, the late 80s, so a really long time. It was used, as all downtown buildings were, for a variety of uses over the 70-ish years that it was active. The most notable was the Weir Furniture Store, which is where the building got its name. And as do many buildings of this vintage, it contained asbestos, lead paint. There had been an underground storage tank, a UST, on this property. And then there was significant amounts of junk and trash within the building. It also had been fairly structurally damaged because due to water intrusion on the roof. And so the back left-hand portion of the building was sagging like several feet below where it should have been. And walking into this building was a pretty apparent structural issue. And it was owned, as many of these buildings are, in kind of these smaller areas by an older resident who didn't have the funds or time or really capacity to invest in this building and to turn it back into productive use. So it had just been sitting vacant for 35 years. Some photos from the site visit that we did in, I believe it was July of 2024. You can see the building next to it had been demolished after a fire. So there was a certain amount of damage to this wall, although it was overall fairly structurally stable on this side. A lot of water intrusion and just general damage on the interior of the building. And then the upper floor of the building was just full of all sorts of trash that had just meandered its way in over the last 35 years. So we went out to the community. We did a few rounds of stakeholder analysis and interviews. And based on the expressed community priorities, we did an opportunity analysis, which did an overview of the market, the economic market in that area to determine feasible uses that could go into this building that would be supported by the local market. And then one of our other partners created some reuse renderings. You can see the example here of what this revitalized building could look like. The final thing we did was create a resource roadmap where we identified probably upwards of 50 different funding sources that could be used for the restoration and reutilization of this building. And we concluded our assistance with a community meeting in November of 2024. So some outcomes of this assistance project. So the Muscle County Commissioners purchased the building in October of 2024, giving them control over the site, which was very important. They were able to receive, let's see, quick math here. That's getting close to $1 million in grant funding to repair the building structurally, to clean up the asbestos and lead paint, and to just get it into overall a better condition so that it could be marketable to a developer. They issued an RFP, and they have actually been successful in attracting a developer who's going to come in and turn the upper floor into, I think, 10 to 12 housing units, and then have commercial uses on the ground floor. So this is a big, really flagship redevelopment of an existing building in a community that has really been lacking in investment in their downtown for the last 35 to 40 to 50 years. And here, just a quick image of some of the work that they've been able to do before and after of kind of the primary commercial space on the ground floor. Okay. So that's a little case study. I will now go into a little bit more detail about the services that we provide at KSU Tab. The one thing to emphasize here, all of our services are free. There's no formal application process. There's no hoops you have to jump through. All you have to do is email me and say, hey, I'd like some assistance. I have a brownfield site and this is what I think I need. We have a conversation. I make sure it's a good fit. And if it is, we just move forward. So we have three main categories of services that I'll go through one by one. So the first is outreach and education. I do things like this call today all the time. So just giving a general overview of brownfields, the resources that are available, how KSU Tab can help. We also partner with two different organizations, Lane Shift and Rocky Mountain Institute. They provide Rocky Mountain Institute provides the Brightfields Academy, and Lane Shift provides an active transportation academy. These are focused on how active transportation and renewable energy can be a good fit with brownfield sites. We also have
Can I do a quick
question?
interjection
Yeah.
on that? Fun fact, WFRC, MAG, and UDOT
Yes.
work with Lane Shift, and we have an active transportation academy. So
That's
if,
awesome.
put that in the back of your mind if you're interested in learning more. The very first class of that is in progress, but
Mhm.
it will happen again. So
Yeah, I just had a call with Ryan Hill yesterday, and he mentioned that he partnered with you guys, and I was like, that's crazy. I'm talking to them tomorrow. So yeah, a bunch of different resources, and we can customize all of that to what fits your needs. We also provide capacity building. We have an online brownfields inventory tool that you can use to create a database of brownfield sites within your community. We have Tab Easy, which helps you write EPA brownfield grants. We have an online platform for exploring environmental records that gives you an overview of some potential environmental conditions in your neighborhood, and a couple other resources here that I'm not going to read to you. And then finally, and I would say our most important category of services is our one-on-one assistance. And this is where we work with communities and nonprofits to help them move these brownfield sites forward. And we can do all sorts of things, market studies, opportunity analyses, highest and best use studies. We can do site planning, either like 3D renderings or like aerial site plans. We do resource roadmaps, which help identify different funding sources that can move projects forward, as well as kind of breaking down the steps of the redevelopment process. And pretty much, anything that you're looking for, we will try to meet. The one thing we can't do is provide legal advice, and then we can't do like engineered stamped drawings, but anything else you can ask for at the very least, and we'll try to make it happen.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, and maybe it's the wrong time for a question, but
go ahead.
It used to be that, you'd come across a brownfield and it would sit in part because nobody wanted to learn if in fact it was actually contaminated, because it would trigger all kinds of questions of who's going to pay for it, and the who might pay for it would go back in time to previous owners, and all of that kind of financial burden just cast a pall on the property, and so it just sat there. And is that still an issue, or has that been legally addressed somehow? And if it is an issue, what's your advice?
Yeah, so that is still an issue. There are protections for what are called bona fide prospective purchasers. So if you conduct a phase 1 environmental site assessment before purchasing the property, you are exempt from CERCLA liability, which is the federal legislation that governs brownfields and those liability concerns that you just mentioned. There are still like current property owners, people who already own the properties who didn't go through the BFPP process, who are afraid of understanding what is on their site because they're afraid of the cleanup cost. And my response to that generally is, first of all, it's burying your head in the sand doesn't make the problem go away. And it is always best to address something as early as you can, because if you don't, it's only going to get worse. And so that is kind of a very specific, site-specific conversation you'd have to have. I'm happy to have additional conversations. But in the interest of time, I know Kirsten still's got a whole presentation to do, and I think we only have 10 minutes. So I'll just skip all this No formal application process, and I will drop my contact information in the chat. And Ted, if you'd like to have further conversations, I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Let me just ask you one final question before you go.
Yes.
So I think, do you have opportunities, or if somebody had an issue with funding with the Brownsfield, can you direct economic directors or owners into where possible funding? Because as we well know, the main issue that comes up is how does this brownfield get cleaned up and who pays for it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one thing I didn't go over was the resources that are available on a federal and state level, and Kristen might go into that a little bit. But yes, I'm happy to have conversations about resources that are available, whether that's with economic development people, private property owners, communities. Our services we have to provide that we can't provide them directly to private property owners. But if that assistance is requested by a community or nonprofit, we're happy to have a conversation. It's just we're grant funded, and so we can't, provide direct assistance to private property owners.
No, great to know. Okay, thanks for that presentation, Kate. Very great information. Kirsten, let's turn some time over to you.
Yep. Then I'll go through this quickly, but the intent is just to illustrate how we as a local government, Salt Lake County, have deployed brownfields funding over time, and hopefully give you guys a few ideas, inspire some conversations, perhaps with Kate's team. And folks are always welcome to call my shop and to ask questions as well. So we have two different categories here, and one of them is a series of assessment grants. So these are smaller grants that we provide to public and nonprofit entities. Salt Lake County administers the EPA money and then provides that service to the property owners or the entities who need assessment. And then we have a revolving loan fund, and that's one of the resources that can help answer Ted's question about how do you deal with what you find, right? So EPA distinguishes these two phases on brownfields. So they draw a pretty clear, bright line between the investigation or the assessment phase, where you're really trying to figure out what's going on a property, versus the remediation or the cleanup phase. So they provide different sources of funding streams. They provide different regulations for how to use assessment money versus remediation money. Which is why you see kind of the differentiation when you're a local government going after some of this federal funding. So really quickly, assessment phases, again, here, you're really just trying to figure out what's happening on the property, what happened in the past. So that's the purpose of your phase one report. I'd imagine most folks on this call have dealt with a phase one. And then when you have an assessment grant, you then generate a sampling and analysis plan that tells EPA how you're going to go out and conduct the physical sampling on the real property, right? So where are you taking soil samples? How are you capturing soil vapor? What are your procedures, your quality assurance, your quality control, your lab controls, all that stuff, right? And then you move on to the actual sampling. So that's typically a phase two report, where you can go through all of those different media to figure out what contamination might exist in them. You can also do what's called a hazardous building materials survey, or an HMI. Based on the building age, that would be very relevant for a lot of older cities, right? So if you have commercial or even residential construction that predates a lot of our current environmental understanding, you're probably going to have asbestos, you're probably going to have lead, you're probably going to have dangerous materials that would affect worker safety while you renovate a building or, kind of redevelop a site. That's what an HMI can characterize for you. Phase two report we talked about, and then finally an assessment grant, or working under the assessment umbrella, can also get you all the way up to a cleanup plan. It doesn't carry through to the remediation phase, but it can help you start scoping that remediation phase as well. So a couple of things we've covered under our current assessment grant is we assisted Magna City, brand new city, in transferring some parcels from its historic Main Street It was a series, their parcels are also very old. They kind of date back to the 1910s or the 1920s. So there's a lot of uncertainty when you have that much commercial operating history on a piece of property. One of the small parcels at one point had an early laundry service and an early dry cleaning service, which triggers alarm bells in brownfields world. So we did phase ones and we did phase twos on this property. Ultimately, everything came back relatively clean or within normal limits, except for some byproduct of municipal water delivery, which is chloroform in the soil gas, which is really interesting. That was unexpected, but not an item of concern. Can certainly, it evaporates on its own as you move through things. Another case study in Murray, we had 3 parcels that needed a phase 2 report as well as a hazardous materials survey based on the previous use as a used car lot and a paint retail store. So on this one, we found asbestos, we found lead, we found VOCs, PAHs, lots of fun chemical, sort of chemical abbreviations that signal, yep, this was a brownfields. And one note, going back to Ted's question, what do you do once you find this stuff? Ultimately, that depends a lot on how you're going to reuse the property, and you can often address milder levels of contaminants or certain categories of contaminants just within the normal redevelopment process. So deploying brownfields grant money or using, designating something as a brownfield does not necessarily sort of doom your property. In fact, it rarely dooms your property. It usually unlocks some additional resources. Poplar Grove, an emerging commercial district, 9th West, 4th South in Salt Lake City, had a history of a gas station and a welding auto repair shop on site. They wanted to redevelop this with neighborhood businesses. They needed some help assessing the interior of the building, as well as some adjacent older residences that also came back with asbestos use, pesticides, some petroleum products, a couple things like that. So in all 3 of these cases, the assessment work helped clarify what conditions exist on properties that public entities are then going to pursue reuse or redevelopment plans on, right? This is our brag slide. We've had grants since 2008. We've assessed more than 200 plus properties within Salt Lake County. Our current grant was $1 million. We're sort of at the tail end of that with about 50 grand left to spend. And we reform a coalition for each new grant cycle. So our current coalition is Magna City and NeighborWorks Salt Lake. We have public meetings periodically to discuss things. Everybody here is invited. Come join us. Revolving loan fund moves us from the characterization phase into more of the remediation or cleanup phase. And this is where EPA gives RLFs, local entities, grant money to capitalize a revolving loan fund that can be used to help cover costs of remediation. So this is the other answer to the question of well, what do you do once you've fully investigated something? Maybe you found something, maybe you didn't. But if you need to move into remediation, an RLF is a product that is designed to help with that. So Salt Lake County's revolving loan fund is kind of funny. We cover the boundaries of Salt Lake County, of course, but then due to the age of the fund and how EPA began back in 2012, we also cover the boundaries of Ogden City. So there's some Ogden City folks on this call. Hopefully you already knew that. And if not, we'll get back in touch because your city boundaries are also eligible for lending out of this revolving loan fund. We have a lot of capacity right now. We're sort of up above the $4.4 million mark on available project money. There's different requirements for an RLF. The takeaway for this is not to memorize the process, but to say that there's a lot of pre-qualifications. If you're interested in this money, we just need to have a series of conversations early in the process so that we can assist you in qualifying for the RLF. A couple of case studies, Centro Civico, we provided actually a sub-grant to a nonprofit developer in this case to help resolve contamination related to volatile organic compounds. Those are nasty chemicals that kind of move through the microscopic gaps in soil and then off gas up into your building. So they installed a sub-slab pressurization system it's kind of like a radon system, similar concept where you actually provide proper venting channels for those chemicals so that they don't come into your sleeping areas or your gathering areas. We also assessed or remediated some asbestos and mercury. Again, those are the hazardous building materials. And we now have a community center and some low-income apartments on site. Another quick case study. Dry cleaners are, as I mentioned, they sound a lot of alarm bells in brownfields because the history of operation on dry cleaning was not well regulated for a long time. And so what you find there is a lot of impacts. In this case, it was a lot of impacts to deep groundwater, and it was migrating. Those contamination was migrating off site in this vicinity. This is 200 West and 900 South in Salt Lake City. So we have a loan with one of the properties on that corner to resolve that contamination. They've done the remediation work. They now have monitoring wells in place to just kind of keep track of that off-gassing, make sure it's within acceptable levels that are safe for what will be a follow-up high-density multifamily housing building. And then finally, this is Ninth Note. This is a low-income housing project on North Temple and I believe 9th West in Salt Lake City. And this was a former gas station that had changed hands a couple of times such that we were able to lend EPA money to a non-responsible party. I'm throwing a lot of jargon out, but basically the people who caused the contamination were far enough in the past that we were able to resolve some of those legal hurdles that came up in a question before and get to a good spot and provide a loan. I'm just going way too fast because we've probably all got 3 PMs and folks are dropping off, I'm sure. This is a map of Salt Lake County brownfields work. If you have any interest, grab the QR code and you can kind of click around to see examples of projects that we've handled. And you can also get a hold of us there if you have any questions. And thank you very much.
Any questions for either Kate or Kirsten? I know we're getting short on time here. Let me just say, Kate and Kirsten, thanks. Great presentations. This is some information we can take in a lot of these communities and put forth and really help economic development. And it's great to have these resources because this comes up and the property owners always have a question of what they do, how they develop from here. And it's good to have experts like you available to answer questions. So thanks very much. Any questions for these two young ladies before we go? Thanks very much for being with us this afternoon.
It's my job to field these questions. If you have questions and you want to, another reminder about a brownfield is, or you want to send me an email and then send me an email again 6 months later, it's all fine. I'm always happy to talk.
Great to know. Appreciate it. Okay, seeing no other questions, let's move on to our last agenda item, which is adjournment. But before we adjourn, I want to make sure everybody's aware our next meeting of this committee will be Thursday, June 11th, 2026. More than likely at 1:30, you'll receive an email on that. And this is also because it's the first meeting of the year. Just a reminder that we're required under state law and as compliance with both this committee and the WFRC to look at the Utah Open and Public Meetings video. The link you received in the link to that video you received in your agenda that went out. You'll also receive an email, follow-up email next week sometime that will include that also. We just ask you take a few minutes to review that video so we can be in compliance and make sure that those training requirements are complete. Any other questions? If not, we'll stand adjourned.
Commissioner,
Marcia, anything else?
Yeah, just before we get off, I know
Go
Mayor Zoltansky showed up just because of the America 250 agenda item. But I think that it's a good conversation to have. Maybe we can even send out an email just to see what other cities are doing and follow up. I don't know if that would, is there something that in particular that we could do?
Well, I know cities have been planning and are planning, especially at the beginning of the year, for America 250 events, and as a tool of economic interest and opportunity. I would love to hear what other cities are doing, or if there is any funding. I know there's a committee. Sandy has applied. We received a $1,500 grant, but I'm looking for something that could be a little bit more robust. We're looking, and it takes a lot to host art competitions or murals. I remember when I was a kid, 1976, everybody neighborhood painted the fire hydrants, and that's a core childhood memory. So where are the kids today going to be thinking back 50 years from now about what they did in the communities? And this is really the time to plan it for the year, because if we wait till June, then really 4th of July is when you need it in play. So I don't know if there's maybe even something informally we can put up a comment board or something and share some ideas and funding sources.
Great idea. And I think, John A., maybe we can do something through a newsletter or something, and, making more aware of what our communities are doing. Ted, do you have some comments around that? Yeah, I love that idea.
I love your idea too.
Yeah.
And I think we can follow up and set the table on that, and just so that there's a swapping of ideas.
Yeah, I know Riverton has done a lot already. Thank you, Mayor. You put your
Steal Riverton's ideas. All right.
Marsh, I think that's a great idea. And we've got some great people that I know in our communities that look at this. We have Sarah Tolliver here in Ogden and Weber County. So you might want to talk to those, send out an email for those that want to get involved with that. Maybe just have an informal Zoom meeting or discussion. Obviously that has to be done before June. So I would fully support that. And I think that those that are in those communities that are planning celebrations that no funding sources would be happy to offer what they have. I know that Sarah would for sure. So let's take advantage of our experts in the field.
And hopefully she's dropped off the meeting. Yeah. Therefore, she doesn't know she's getting recruited to help.
Yeah. With that. Well, she's used to that from me. So yeah. Okay. Anything else? Appreciate your attendance. We'll see you, if not before, on June 11th, 2026. Thanks. We'll stand adjourned. Appreciate you being with us this afternoon.
Thank you.